today's news, the United Kingdom accepts the BVI government's proposal and the Elmore Stoke High School and Jos Van Dyke Primary projects to benefit from the $31 million SAP funds and sought to become the BVIEC's new supplier of No.2 Diesel fuel. The $158 million venture and the recent proposal, the recent protests, do not fully represent the BVI's public's view on UK direct rule, says Governor. But these are more stories when 284 News returns.
Yo, everything good, Dad?
Aye. This thing got me one way, Daddy.
What do you mean?
Ever since I hook up with this thing, I can't eat, I can't sleep. This is the first thing I touch it when I reach home.
What do you really? Hey, this ain't like you, know?
Dad, this thing got me staying home, keeping out of trouble me.
Wow. What your name is?
Shit. I talking about my CCT life.
Don't worry about missing your favorite series, sports, news, and local programming. Come to CCT today and sign up for CCT Live to access over 80 channels. CCT Live. Bring it home.
1 month free trial turn into 5. 5 months turn into, well, you know I hustle. I watching ball. I been watching football. Dad, Nickelodeon, Paw Patrol. I am hooked. Hook, I tell you.
Welcome everyone. It's Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. I'm Kamal Haynes, coming to you live from the beautiful British Virgin Islands. Well, thank you so much for joining us, viewers. Well, we start today's newscast with a recap of the top stories from this morning's press conference, where His Excellency Governor John Rankin, alongside Premier Dr. the Honourable Natalia Wheatley, provided an update to the territory of the Virgin Islands on the Commission of Inquiry and its recommendations. Well, Governor Rankin, in his address, announced that the UK has accepted the proposal presented by the National Unity Government on the Virgin Islands, which, among other measures, does not include a suspension of the territory's constitution.
As people in the BVI are already aware, the Commission of Inquiry report, which was published on the 29th of April, identified significant failures of governance, including evidence of corruption, abuse of office, and serious impropriety. To address these failures, it is clear that fundamental changes are required. The final report proposed 49 recommendations to improve good governance, accountability, transparency, and the rule of law, providing a comprehensive and robust roadmap that will help the territory deliver better public services and meet the aspirations of the people of the BVI. The question now is how to best implement the Commission of Inquiry recommendations in support of the best interests of the people of the territory. Since publication of the Commission of Inquiry report, I have been discussing this question with the Honourable Premier and the Government of National Unity, as well as with the United Kingdom Government. All agree that a fundamental shift in governance is required. The focus of discussions has been on whether this should be led by the Government of National Unity or through a partial suspension of the Constitution and an interim governor-led administration. Last week, following discussions, the Government of National Unity submitted a final proposal to the UK Government outlining with clear timelines how they will deliver the Commission of Inquiry recommendations, but without the need for a temporary partial suspension of the Constitution. I can inform you this morning that UK ministers have agreed to the proposal submitted by the Government of National Unity. The Premier and the Government of National Unity have shown the will and commitment to improve governance in the BVI, and therefore it is right that elected officials here should have the opportunity to implement the COI recommendations.
Well, Governor Rankin further disclosed what the UK expects from the BVI government and what ramifications will be applied if progress is not within the specified deadlines which are set for the implementation of the recommendations.
But the UK government has a responsibility to the people of the BVI to make sure that happens. So to ensure that these commitments are kept, the proposal contains a number of conditions surrounding implementation. And in particular, it contains a set of strict delivery milestones. Regular public updates against these milestones will be provided, with each BVI government ministry and the departments providing monthly delivery reports. And I will formally assess progress every 3 months before sending a quarterly update to the Foreign Secretary in the UK. And this will continue throughout the full period of COI implementation, which is estimated to be 2 years in total. If the Government of National Unity or any subsequent government fails to deliver any of the milestones without reasonable justification, or I assess that progress is being frustrated in any way, the UK government and I will take action to protect the interests of people here. And that includes the continuing option of temporary suspension of the House of Assembly and Cabinet, with a temporary governor-led interim administration assisted by an advisory council to drive forward the implementation of any outstanding recommendations. The UK government has put in place the framework to do this through an order in council. This is the procedural order put before the Privy Council in the UK, which is required in order to make any changes to the constitution of the BVI. And that will allow the Foreign Secretary to swiftly provide me with the powers necessary to take corrective action if progress against the milestones is unsatisfactory. But if the government of the BVI delivers on the commitments and promises they have made, then the order in council will be kept in reserve and will not need to be used.
Well, regarding elections that are constitutionally due by May 2023, Premier Wheatley confirmed that once the Constitution remains, elections will be held, and elected governments after the election must proceed with the plans.
The proposal mentions a 2-year timeline. And of course, as you said, elections are due probably somewhere around May next year, which would mean that this proposal would be binding on any future administration. And these reforms begin right away. As the governor has mentioned, we've already started working on making changes. And of course, this will be our main priority right up until the election, and any future government, of course, will have to be true to those commitments over the next 2 years.
Well, our reporter Ron Grant was present and further addressed a number of questions to Governor Rankin and Premier Wheatley. Take a listen.
A pleasant morning to all. Ron Grant of 284 Media. Governor Rankin, Premier, based on questions earlier asked, can either of you confirm whether or not the territory will be going into general elections by the constitutional date due?
Well, of course, until anything changes in terms of the Constitution, elections are constitutionally due somewhere around May next year, and I'm operating based on that premise.
Thank you. Governor, I would like you to explain to us, the general public, what are the responsibilities of the governor in the Constitution as it relates to the administration of the territory. Break that down for us.
Under the Constitution, the governor is responsible for the security of the territory, and in particular, policing. Secondly, the governor is responsible for external relations, other than relations with some of the regional organisations which had evolved to the elected government here. Thirdly, the governor, working with the deputy governor, has particular responsibilities for the public service, and in particular the terms and conditions of the public service. And the governor has responsibility for the independent institutions under the Constitution, for the courts, for the Auditor General, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Public Service Commission, those independent bodies which provide the checks and balances within any democratic system. And my key job as governor is to carry out those responsibilities under the Constitution. I will continue to do that as long as I will remain in office, as I'm sure my successors will also. So those are the key roles which my predecessors have served and which I will continue to serve.
Thank you. Now, with that in mind, the COI report primarily absolves the governors of any responsibility at all for the state of the territory. Given those responsibilities that you have outlined that the governor has, how is it possible, Governor, that all the blame has seemingly been laid on local leadership and no blame whatsoever or responsibility has been seemingly left at the feet of governors, whether present or past?
The Commissioner clearly examined this issue in his report, and in particular in the hearings, one of the claims that was made was that the failures in governance were primarily the responsibility of the public service rather than of the then elected government. And if you look at the report, you will see that there was examination of that point, and the Commissioner concluded, and as I stated in my evidence before the Commission, I did not believe that any inadequacies which it might be argued for within the public service are sufficient justification for the failures of governance which are contained in the territory. And I believe that conclusion, which was reflected in the Commissioner's report, is accurate. But of course, where there have been wrongdoing, where there have been failures, then I do accept responsibility for that. And as we know, there have been some bad apples within the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force. And I am determined to support the Police Commissioner in rooting out those rotten apples and ensuring that we have a police service which reaches and lives up to the highest standards, as I believe all agencies in the BVI should do.
Thank you, Governor. Accepting responsibility is one thing. Being held accountable is another. With that being said, for a more democratic and better received process, you mentioned the Commissioner. Don't you think, and this question is for both the Premier and the Governor, don't you both think that it would have been best to have at least 3 commissioners instead of 1? What are your thoughts on one sole commissioner?
Well, interestingly, the Commissioner himself made a recommendation that the Commission of Inquiry Act, which dates back to 1880, if memory serves correctly, be reviewed to see if we can further develop Commission inquiries for the future to meet best practice within common law jurisdictions. But that is not in any way to criticise the process that was carried out. And as was said at the beginning of the questions in this press conference, the Commission of Inquiry process could not have been more transparent. Every day available for people to watch on YouTube. All those questioned by the Commission of Inquiry had the opportunity to have legal representation, were given warning letters as necessary before they appeared before the Commission. As I know myself, from when I was cross-examined, examined both by the Commissioner and by Sir Geoffrey Cox. And so there was procedural fairness, and we need to ensure that in any revision of the Commission of Inquiry Act, we achieve that same fairness for the future.
Thank you, Governor.
Yeah, I just want to echo what the Governor has said. I think the Commissioner rightly concluded that the Commission of Inquiry Act, which is, more than a century, probably close to a century and a half old, needs to be revised. And I agree with that, and keep it in best practices of commissions of inquiry. And I'll just say as well, I don't see now as the time to blame one party blaming the other. Now is the time for us to come together and to make reforms which are in the best interest of all the people of the Virgin Islands.
Well, viewers, if you missed the press conference, it can be viewed on our Facebook platform. Well, up next, the Elmersdale High School and Jos Van Dyke Primary projects to benefit from the $31 million SAP funds and Sol to become the BVIEC's new supplier of No.2 Diesel fuel in a $158 million venture. But these and more stories when 284 News returns.
The beautiful Virgin Islands, or nature's little secret as some prefer, where the weather stays warm and the drinks stay cold, where men in wigs get their lawyer bills paid by governments and governments lose planes, where walls are built and prisoners escape. You vacation where we suffer. BVI love.
You value traditions. Today. You value music. You value education. Family. I love you. Service.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Love. Life. At Popular, we're committed to you and everything our community values. For the things you value the most, count on us. Popular.
There's a reason you get up on a morning. A reason you pick yourself up, start the day. Maybe it's sheer grit. Maybe it's your ethics. Maybe it's because you know people like you are waiting. For people just like you. We all have our reasons, and for Republic Bank, that reason is you. Every little thing, every big thing. It's all about making a difference in your life. Because after 182 years, if it's one thing we're sure about, is that the difference is you. We're here to help.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
Well, welcome back, viewers. Well, the Elmer Stout High School redevelopment project has now secured all the monetary resources needed for completion after the National Unity Government passed a schedule of additional provisions, also referred to as SAP, totaling more than $31 million. Well, Premier and Minister of Finance, Dr. the Honorable Natalia Wheatley, made the announcement during Tuesday's session of the House of Assembly after the SAP underwent a rigorous exercise before being unanimously voted upon and passed. Well, Premier Wheatley detailed the composition of the funds, which were mainly drawn from the Reserve Fund and the Consolidated Fund.
Be it resolved that the House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands approves the supplementary estimate set out in the schedule, which represents monies to be expended under their respective heads in variation or excess of the amount appropriated by the Appropriation Act 2022, Act 2021, number 41 of 2021 as follows. A, recurrent expenditure of $11,199,700 to be charged against the Consolidated Fund of the Territory, which includes a sum of $5,878,000 from the Reserve Fund. B, capital acquisition expenditure of $836,000, which includes a sum of $676,000 from the Reserve Fund, and a sum of $160,000 to be charged against the Development Fund of the Territory by way of funds transferred from the Consolidated Fund. And C, capital expenditure of $19,361,500, which includes a sum of $3,964,200 from the Reserve Fund and $850,000 from the Transportation Network Improvement Fund to be charged against the Development Fund of the Territory.
Well, the Premier said that with the many present challenges that are being faced in the territory, his government was faced with the difficulty of having to decide what respective projects to prioritize. Well, in listing some of the projects, the Elmer Stout High School project and the Jos Van Dyke Primary School project were among the names called.
I think a real victory for us in this SAP is that we have provided the funding to complete the Elmer Stout High School project. And I'm sure that the Minister of Education will want to expound a little bit on that. And we found we've put the resources in place to be able to start the Jas Van Dyke primary school project. And of course, I know also that the Minister of Education, as well as the district representative, will certainly will be happy about that and will want to recognize that. And of course, we have, spending for some human resources in the Ministry of Education that will assist with getting the projects ready, the other projects which need to be done on our primary and secondary schools throughout the territory. Of course, in terms of health, the Ministry of Health, we have a number of urgent areas which need to be addressed. We've sought to address some of those areas here. Of course, in terms of garbage collection, recycling program. Of course, monies for incinerator down at Packwood Pond. And of course, in Ministry of Health is a critical area of focus, and we're looking forward to the minister coming forward with his reforms in a number of areas that will help us to make better value for money.
Well, Premier Wheatley said the healthcare system, the Department of Solid Waste Management, and the departments are entities that fall within the scope of the Commission of Inquiry report recommendations will also benefit from the $31 million schedule of additional provisions. Well, moving on, viewers, where we see Sol St. Lucia Limited has been named to become the BVI Electricity Corporation's new supplier of No.2 Diesel fuel for the purpose of producing electricity in the territory over the next 2 years. But this was confirmed by the BVIEC in a media release dated June 7, 2022, that said the corporation received a bid from Sol St. Lucia Limited, BVI, which was the loan company, to respond to the recently published tender. But the BVIEC said, and I quote, "On May 27, 2022, BVIEC received one bid for the supply of various petroleum products, which was opened virtually on June 2, 2022. Or present at the opening was the board of directors, senior management, the media, and the bidder, Sol St. Lucia Limited, BVI," end quote. But the estimated value of the contract, which is for the period of 2022 to 2024, is $158,870,523.24. But the bulk of this sum will go towards the supply of No.2 Diesel to the Henry Wilfred Smith Power Station in the amount of $156,159,360. In addition, Sol will be contracted to supply lubricating oil to the main power station in the amount of $856,491.84 and will also be required to provide No.2 diesel fuel to the Anegada Power Station in the sum of $1,854,671.40. But the contract has not yet been awarded. Well, viewers, just to give some insight on a backstory as to how this situation happened, well, this news follows the recent contract termination of Delta Petroleum Limited, which was initially contracted as the main supplier to provide the BVIEC with the No.2 diesel fuel until 2026. Well, after just 5 months of entering an agreement with the BVIEC, the corporation disclosed that there was a communication breakdown by Delta after they failed to fulfill their contractual obligations. Well, Delta subsequently responded, stating that their attempt to convince the BVIEC to resort to a cleaner option of fuel resulted in the termination of their contract after they failed to provide the No.2 diesel fuel as contractually obligated. Well, viewers, up next, the recent protests do not support or do not fully represent the public's view on UK direct rules as governor. We get to that story after a word from our sponsors.
Hello?
Wait, you had a lunch and care? You say you were sick? What happened to our wedding rehearsal?
No, babe. I'm actually watching the news right now. Take a listen.
Topping our newscast today, UFOs seen around Tortola Pier Park.
And district 3 residents outraged over no water
reply, they simply cannot bathe. These and more stories when 284 News returns.
All right, babe, just get some rest, take 2 Advil, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Okay, honey, I see you later. I love you.
It's clear to see that Coconut Lounge is a place to be, the coolest cocktail lounge in the British Virgin Islands. A lounge like no other, with welcoming, professional service and a breathtaking ambiance, not forgetting a diverse selection of wines, beers, and signature cocktails. Cozy, comfortable, contemporary. Coconut Lounge at Tortola Pier Park. Visit us today. Brilliant Hands and Minds Tutoring Services. One-on-one tutorials in math and English, intense homework assistance, academic enrichment, school projects, effective communication and public speaking development, sign language for adults and children on Saturdays only. Registered with the Virgin Islands High School Certificate Program, Brilliant Hands and Minds can help you too. Offering intense curriculum-based training to help you or your loved ones get their high school diploma. It's time to make your family's education a #1 priority. Hurry, space is limited. Brilliant Hands and Minds Learning Center. We are the trained education professionals.
The wait is over! CCT Fire is here! Experience ultra-fast downloads, seamless streaming, and even more reliable connectivity on an all-new fire-blazing super-fast CCT Fiber network. CCT Fire, bring it home and upgrade today.
Well, welcome back, viewers. With the 2 recent protests that were held by residents to show their position against the partial suspension of the territory's constitution are not a full representation of the BVI public. Well, Governor His Excellency John Rankin made a statement in a recent interview with 284 Media. Well, he said that residents are entitled to protest and to their respective views, but noted that the 2 recent protests which were held outside his compound were relatively small in numbers and may not represent the views of the wider population.
Well, of course we need to listen to people, and that's what I've been doing since the report was published, and that's what Minister Milling, the Minister for the Overseas Territory, did when she came here, meeting groups across the community. With respect, there have been 2 relatively small protests, and I'm not sure they're necessarily representative of views across the territory. I've heard different opinions expressed on this matter. People are entitled to hold their views, and people are entitled to protest.
Well, Governor Rankin also noted that the overall consensus following interactions with some residents is that change is needed and should be undertaken with the help of the United Kingdom government.
But almost nobody that I've spoken to, indeed, nobody I've spoken to, has said that change is not required. Everybody I've spoken to recognises that things need to change quite fundamentally. And almost everyone I've spoken to said they want the UK to help. And so in my discussions with the Honourable Premier, in discussions with his ministers, as I say, the question is not what needs to be done, the question is how we do it. And I don't believe that those who are protesting against the possibility of partial suspension would argue that there have not been failings in the territory which need to be addressed very seriously indeed.
Well, viewers, that's all we have for today's newscast. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. Kamal Haynes, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you for watching us. Bye-bye.
Brilliant Hands and Minds Tutoring Services. One-on-one tutorials in math and English, intense homework assistance, academic enrichment, school projects, effective communication and public speaking development, sign language for adults and children on Saturdays only. Registered with the Virgin Islands High School Certificate Program, Brilliant Hands and Minds can help you too. Offering intense curriculum-based training to help you or your loved ones get their high school diploma. It's time to make your family's education a #1 priority. Hurry, space is limited. Brilliant Hands and Minds Learning Center. We are the trained education professionals.